Hello everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. I'm Steve and today I'm going to do an overview on this Linksys EA6700 AC1750 wireless router. And here's the front of the box. Of course, it's the Linksys EA6700. It is AC1750, which means that it does use a dual band radio, or essentially two radios, one with the N band 450 and another AC 1300, giving you a total of 1750 megabits per second download speed. Now you will have access to different apps that Linksys will allow you to administer and connect to different devices on this particular router, as well as having the ability to use two USB ports on the back, which I'll show you here in just a moment, and 4 gigabit Ethernet ports as well. So let me flip around to the back here and show you a little bit more about this particular device. You do want to recognize the fact they're giving you a little grid here to show you, or a particular table, in other words, to show you what devices you might have in the house and what need of which particular grouping they have their routers in. So they've grouped them from A, B, C, all the way to D, and essentially what they're doing is they're saying, depending on the size house you have, you'll need a stronger set of radios inside the router. So the C and D classes are here at bigger homes, and then also dependent on the number of devices you have connected to this router. So here, 3 or less, 6 or less, 7 or more on both of these. So looking across this board here, you'll notice if you have a smaller home, you can get away with pretty much any one of the routers, depending on the amount of devices you have. So small home, 7 devices, you're going with a D or a C. Big home, few devices, you can get away with a C. Anything more than 6 or anything more than 3, I suppose, you're looking at the D class, which is this particular router. Here's the stuff that comes in the box. Let me start first with the CD. Of course, you'll get all your software as well as the documentation inside this. In this particular instance, I actually don't think that there's any software in it. It's just purely documentation. Moving right along, you do get this card that allows you to install a simple tap app, which essentially allows you to use NFC or near field communications with your Droid-based devices. And I'm not sure if there's any iOS devices that take advantage of this, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. Now we do get this quick start guide, which does start off with all the information you need in order to connect to it. Although there is a CD-less setup in this particular device, like most of Linksys' routers, you will be able to just connect to it, turn it on, and run through the setup, which I'm going to show you too in just a moment. Here's the AC adapter that you would need in order to power this particular device. Fairly large brick on this one, as well as the Ethernet cable that does come with it. Now the main event. Let me just slide this stuff out of the way. And you can see that this particular device has a sort of a matte black finish with looks like this silver plastic over the front. You can see that it is Cisco, of course, powering all Linksys products. EA6700 moniker down at the bottom. Now if I flip it around, I can show you the little bit of the breathing room that this particular device has, as well as the MAC address and all the other information here, including the password, the initial password setup. I'll flip that down so you can see all the ports on the back of it. I'll start here, the WPS connection button, so that will allow you to connect to other WPS compatible devices. This is a USB 3.0 port, so you'll be able to share 3.0 devices, hard drives or flash drives that are USB 3.0, as well as USB 2.0. Of course, these are both backwards compatible, so if you use 2.0 in this, you'd be safe, as well as 1.1 or 1.0 on these. Moving along, we do have 4 gigabit Ethernet ports here with the activity lights as well as connection lights. And then we have the Ethernet or the WAN port that would go out to your cable box or your DSL modem. Reset button here, as well as the plug for the power. So all I've done so far is just connect the router itself, give it the WAN connection as well as a connection to my computer, and power it up. At this particular point, I've logged into the standard connection IP that you would normally use for Linksys product, which is 192.168.1.1. At this particular point, it pops up. It uses its own little connection here to LinksysSmartWiFi.com, and then allows me to set up the smart Wi-Fi. So I've accepted it, and I'm going to click Next. If you wanted to set this up manually, you could still do that by clicking this and clicking Next. Now it's letting me know that it's connected itself to the internet and that it finds updates. So I'm going to click Next, and it's going to update this particular router. Okay, now that the update's done and the router itself has been reset, you might actually have to go back to the 192.168.1.1 here in the address bar. In order to bring it back up again, I had to do that once, and then the system was up and running. Bottom line is, we're now at the wireless settings. So here you'd set up what you want the SSID to be, which is essentially what it broadcasts to every other device out there. So we are going to change that to Newegg TV test. And then whatever password that you want. And in this particular case, I'm just going to say Newegg TV. Actually, it's not 8, so I'm going to complete that as a double. Terrible practice, by the way. Do not ever do this in real life. This is just me setting it up. You really want to use alphanumeric passwords that have upper and lower case, and in some cases use symbols depending on how often you feel the need for total security or not. So, moving right along. Now at this particular point, it's just asking you to create a router password, of which I'm going to change it. You wouldn't need to do that, you just need to write it down. It's just easier for me, for the administering side, to have it very easy for the sake of this test. So click next again. Now it's just telling me that everything's set up and double verifying everything I've set up for the router settings so far. Clicking next. Now it's asking me to create a smart Wi-Fi account. I had to retry this connection one time, but after that it did allow me to come in here. So allow me a few moments here to actually set up an account, and then we can move forward. If you already have a Linksys smart Wi-Fi sign-in, then you'll be able to use that at this particular point. Since I don't, I'm going to need to. So now I've logged in, and we're currently getting ready to enable access to our router via the internet through our smart Wi-Fi apps and whatnot. So let me just name this. I'm going to associate this router with this particular password. Give me just a moment. Now that I've typed in the administrator password that I've already typed in before, I'm now connected to linksysmartwifi.com through the internet into this particular device, or at least that's the way it seems. So looking here, I can see all the different, the main landing page that we're on here, showing me all the different ways that we could interact with this particular device, showing the different device lists that we can actually connect to, guest access, parental controls, what media is going to be prioritized for the network, an actual speed test for it, which is pretty cool. I'm actually going to try that really quickly. So let's begin the test and see where it turns out. Through the magic of our editor, Anna, you can see I've just popped up with instant results. It didn't take very long actually to do it. Although it is using Ookla, I believe that's the pronunciation if I ever actually had to say it in public, but it is what one of the servers you can use through speed test to check, and it looks very similar to the same layout. This is showing me that I have 91.62 megabits per second download and 71.98. Now you're probably a little bit jealous, but that's just Newegg. So let me just flip right ahead. Now if I had any USB devices, I could click this particular link and add different storage. Change the folder access, who has what to what access, as well as FTP server setup and media server setup, so that you can use DNLA type connection to different devices. Now, I just want to show you guys a couple other things with this particular setup. We do see here that it does have the guest accesses on, and I'm going to shut that off so that others won't be able to use it. On the landing page, we do have a couple more options. First off, on the device list, I can add another device, and allows me to add another computer, or a WPS-related device, a compatible device, or some kind of a gaming console or a printer, and that would allow access to the other devices that are currently connected to it to be able to interact with it through this router. Now, I do want to mention a couple other things. One of the best parts of this particular router is actually some of the hardware that's internal. They are using what's called beamforming technology, which I've mentioned before on another router that's come out, and it does use the Athros chips from Qualcomm to essentially use this software to better form a connection between your device and this router. So it's essentially focusing the wireless signal to reduce interference and improve speed and range, so that you could wake up in the morning in maybe a basement of your particular house and you realize you only have 2 bars of connection to your iPhone or your Droid device. Then as it finds that device and connects to it, it realizes that it's got low strength and then boosts that signal going directly to your device. So moving along, I'll just show you a little bit more inside the control panel here. The guest access, where you'd actually be able to allow people to access, I have already disabled that, but if you wanted to enable it, it does have a password here that you could change, and this is the SSID that people would connect to, which is anyTV_test dash guest. So whatever the name is you initially had, it's just going to add a dash guest to it. You probably noticed this before when you've gone over to your friend's house and seen a guest network to connect to it. So moving right along, I'm going to move us down to connectivity, where we can talk about the different radios that are currently connected to it. 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. Both of them are the exact same name. So I'm assuming that if you were to connect to the NETV test, it would recognize the fact that you have 5 gigahertz connectivity and connect to that particular device. Moving along the internet settings, you can change the MTU size as well as clone your MAC address if you like to, or just essentially instead of cloning it from your PC, just make a whole new one. Reasons for doing that, I'd say more importantly, if you wanted to change your IP address and you wanted to just change your MAC to something else and then reconnect it to your cable modem, then it would give you a new IP address. Although it should be doing that anyways every so often, it just depends on the ISP. And then clicking over to IPv6, you can see now that do have a couple more additional things that you can get set up, as well as tunneling, but we're moving right along. The local network, you can set up exactly how you want this to get connected. If you have multiple routers on your network, you're going to want to change the start IP address here to be something slightly different. It doesn't look like I can change the subnet mask, so that's going to stay the same, or it's going to change depending on the IP address that you pick. Also, the client lease time, that's the amount of time it takes before it tells your device, oh, this has been connected for 1,440 minutes, so let's say that it has to renew it now. So it's going to ask to reconnect again and get a new IP address. Also, you can set up specific DNSs here, so you can use Google DNS or OpenDNS, whichever you prefer, and you can set up your DHCP reservations, which would be like if you were setting up a server, a NAS on your particular network, and you don't want that IP address to change, then you would select it here, and then you would add the reservation for it, meaning that it would say, oh, reserve this computer to always have this IP no matter how many times it connects to it, and that's relating back to the MAC address of that device. Moving along, you can set up a static route through the entire device, connecting one device to another without having to skip around too much. It would just go directly to it. That is a layman's term for all that. But moving along, we do have the local management access. So this is how you'd be able to access the administrator panel that I'm currently looking at. It's set up right now to use only HTTP. You could set it up to use HTTPS, which is more secure than HTTP. Also, you could remove wireless access so that if you only wanted your device to be changed via some computer on your network, it would have to be connected directly wired to one of the gigabit ports on the back of this device, as opposed to wireless, if I were to uncheck that. Remote access, that is allowing me to connect into it using the different Wi-Fi tools, one of them being this website that I'm using right now. Moving along, you can also enable or disable UPnP and allow users to configure it themselves. Now I'm going to move along to the next area, which is security. So here you can actually mess with the stateful packet inspection for this particular firewall, setting up the firewall to actually check for different things that would tell it, are you being DDoS attacked, or is there some kind of unlawful entry trying to be gained? The firewall can be disabled or enabled here, as well as setting up different filters, different internet WAN side filters, where it will filter for multicasting or NAT redirections or anonymous internet, or filter idents to check out what you have and what you're currently running. VPN pass-through, so if you have a VPN set up, you could be running this at another network, some other location in the world, and then VPNing directly in through it. And this is the different enables for different protocols, IPsec, PPT, and L2TP. So moving along, you can also actually add different firewall settings for different protocols to be allowed or disallowed through your firewall. So if you're going to set up maybe a game or something that would need certain ports to go through, that's where you do it. Or actually, you know what, they actually have a setting here for apps and gaming. So you can set up, oh, this is just for DYDNS. So essentially, let's say you want to be able to directly connect to this particular device from somewhere else in the world, and you don't know the IP address that it's currently connected to, then this would actually set up a specific URL that you could connect to in order to get to this particular device. So maybe it would be like burial.dydns.org, and that's what you would connect to. You'd have to, of course, set up an account, username, password, host name, and yada, yada, yada. But here you would also do the single port forwarding, so you could port forward from outside a network directly to a particular server or computer that you have on there. Port range forwarding, so you could say, instead of just a single port, multiple ports, also helpful when you're setting up gaming. Then we have the port range triggering. This is more common. Essentially, if you know what particular device the port it's going to be using on the way out, or a game that you're currently using, the port that it uses on the way out, you would set that up as a trigger, and then you'd set up the forward port that's getting the incoming data on the WAN side, and it would divert it through your network directly to the computer or device that's currently on there using that port. Now, one last thing I think I did mention, I did miss the wireless connectivity. Nope, I did cover that, except for Simple Tap, which is doing the NFC-enabled mobile devices, so using that card to get it all set up with your router. So give me just a second to set these things up, and I'll show you a little bit more. I do have one quick correction to make. Turns out when I was reading this, I didn't read it very carefully, but this particular card is the actual, what it needs to connect to the near field. I'm just going to remove this real quick so I can show you. So you can see it just has the lines running through it, so that when a near field communication-based device gets close to it, like a phone that has NFC installed on it, then it would essentially just say, oh, okay, I know what I need to be able to do with this. It's supposed to be able to connect to this wireless router, and it will then do that. So you just have to tap this card against the mobile device that has NFC on it, and it will connect to your wireless network automatically for you. So pretty cool, called the Simple Tap. So here we are on my iPhone with the app installed. Now this is just exactly what we saw before, with one difference, the App Center here, but I'll get into that last. I can go over to access the guest access as well as parental controls. And moving along, I can also do media prioritization, depending on which system needs what to be able to run with more bandwidth prioritized. USB storage, if I had one connected, I'd be able to mess with that here, as well as the list of devices on the network. Currently I have 3 of them, including my phone. And we're back to the App Center. So the App Center is essentially Linksys Smart Wi-Fi apps that you can actually purchase in order to be able to, wow, if this thing would work. Oh my God, it's like magic. So just like you never noticed anything wrong at all, there's a total of 5 apps or 6 apps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apps that are currently here. Starting with the first one, you can get something called Block the Bad Stuff, which essentially adds one of 3 levels of protective filtering on your wireless network with the Block the Bad Stuff app developed for this particular router, as well as these other ones here, the EA2700, 3500, 4200 version 2, and the EA4500 and the EA6500. So moving along, we do have several other things to talk about: the device monitor, the Gemini IP camera viewer, as well as hit play and net proofer. So essentially you just get access to additional apps that you be able to install and get a little more access, a little more functionality out of your router. And that wraps up this overview and demonstration of the Linksys EA6700 wireless router. If you like what you saw today, click the like button. If you haven't already done so, click subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.